Our beginning slide. All right. Wa tēnā rā kātou katoa, ngā mihi nui kia kauta, nau mai haere wa mai ki tēnei kaupapa o tēnei rā generative AI, navigating the opportunities and challenges. My name is Monica. I'm speaking to you from the beautiful Ōkaho overlooking the Waihao Valley, and I welcome you to this meeting on behalf of Te Pūtiyaki Mana Taonga, the Association of Educators Beyond the Classroom. Now, for us to get started, we're going to start with karakia, and seeing that our weather has been the way it is, this karakia seemed utterly appropriate for today. Whakatake te hau ki te uru, whakatake te hau ki te tonga, kia mā kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai, e hi ake ana te atakura, he tio, he huka, he hauhu, ti hei Māori ora. Oops, sorry. Well, kia ora anō. It is my pleasure to host this webinar here today for the Te Pūtiyaki Mana Taonga committee. And today we have got Tara Fagan from Te Papa Tongarewa speaking to us about AI. So without further ado, I invite Tara, who we are all very familiar with, to come up on the screen, share her slides, and share her kōrero. Thank you so much, Tara.
Kia ora, thanks Monica, and thanks for those, Danny that's joined us live, and for those that will be watching on the recording. Just bear with me while I remember how to share my slides. It's been a while since I've used this format, and I am just about to bring them up now. So bear with me. They should be appearing on your screen about now. And I just need to put them into presentation mode. Bear with me, and I might just do it this way. Can you still see the slides? Yep, great. Yes. Thanks, Monica, and welcome Andrew too. First of all, I want to leave time at the end of the webinar today to just have a discussion. I also want to say I'm not an expert in AI. I've just got an interest in all things digital, and AI is one of these areas. So I don't claim to be presenting this from the font of all knowledge, but I've done a lot of reading in this space and had a lot of discussions. So that's what I'm going to be sharing today. We had a session earlier on, and I can't remember whether it was at the end of last year or the beginning of this year, but we have had a session, the recording's up on the website, and we looked at AI, and that session was very much about different models. We looked at what Gen AI is, some of the different models, how models are being trained. We had some information about using good AI prompts. Whereas today we're actually going to go deeper into some of the things that we need to think about. They're not necessarily all challenges, but they're things that we as individuals and for our organisations need to think about before we get started with AI. In saying that, this isn't really a let's look at all the AI models, but there is one that I want to share and show you because I think it actually might be useful to many of us in our lives, particularly if it's a model that you don't know about. So I'm just going to stop sharing this screen and start sharing another one. So just bear with me while I bring that up. And this will only be a brief part, but I think it's really useful and just worth being able to talk a little bit about it before we get into AI considerations. So I'm not sure whether anybody has heard of Google Notebook, Notebook LM. It is a product from Google which comes free with educations, or if you have a Google account. And what it is, it's a notebook where you can put readings and things, and it helps build the information as a study assistant and a research assistant with you. So I'm just scrolling through the Google LM or Notebook Plus site to show you some of the things that it can do. But what I would like to do, and if I can do this well, I will just be sharing another tab, present something else, bear with me, and I want to go straight to that page and show you how it might be used. So what I have done before this, Hui, is I have uploaded reading. So this is what Notebook LM looks like when you're there. You can see on the left-hand side, I've uploaded this reading here. It's called The Role of Museums in Education. It's got a slightly different title than that. I can't remember what it is off the top of my head, but it's from Catherine Weber. It was her master's thesis, and she came out of DePaul University in the States. Now, Monica will share the link for that in the chat. It's a really interesting reading on its own, so I thought it was worth sharing at the same time. Museums Engage Education and Community Engagement. There's the full title there. So really, really interesting reading. So it's 103 pages long. So I've uploaded it to Google LM and put it in there. Now it gives me a short summary here, and I'm just not sharing my screen in the right way to be able to show you the full activity. Bear with me for a moment. We might go down, let's see if I can do it this way. There we go. You might go down a bit of a mirror hall at the moment, but we should be able to bring it back fairly quickly. Great, you should all be with me now, and I've got it. So I've got my full tool. So I've uploaded the reading here on the left-hand side. In the middle is a summary of that. Now I can interact with that material. So I can add notes, I can get an audio overview, or I can take a mind map that summarizes that reading for me. So I'm just going to click that now, and technology being what it is, it possibly won't work for me today, but it creates a mind map. It pulls out all the summary facts and creates a mind map, and then you can click on an area and go to that particular part of the that section. So you don't have to read the whole thing if you don't want to, or in fact I have, and I think it's a great thesis, but you can just go to particular sections depending on what you're interested. Now over here on the right hand side is the studio. Now the studio mode's in beta format at the moment, but you can create a podcast. So it takes that reading that you've uploaded, and you can upload multiple. So you might even put 5 or 6 readings in there. It can be more than that, of similar topics, and use it to summarize, create mind maps of, or a podcast. Now I'm doing study at the moment, so I'm faced with a lot of readings that I'm doing, and this is a really valuable tool for me, because what it enables me to do is listen to summaries of readings as I'm driving home from work, and then identify the ones that I actually want to go back and read fully in depth, the ones that are useful for me. Now, I'll play you the podcast. A couple of things I'll need to say. It is in beta mode at the moment. It's Americanized at the moment, and you can choose to have 1 or 2 speakers. I've currently got it on 2. So very American voices speaking, but they're working on that behind the scenes to change different accents. The other thing that's the option is interactive mode. So in fact, perhaps what I'll do is play just the start of it so you can see how they summarize it and have an engaging conversation about the content. Monica, can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear it once I press play?
Yes, I will give you a thumbs up.
So that tells me you can't hear it. Was there any sound coming through?
No, sorry, I couldn't hear it because it's the full screen shared. You need to share just that tab for the audio to come
Okay,
through.
and that's not working for the audio. I can't actually print it. But anyway, I'll just talk about it. Basically, you've got 2 people, 12 minutes 30, taking 103-page thesis and having a discussion about the content and bringing it back to real life content. So it's a great way of summarizing readings. Now, the interactive mode that is here, I haven't had success with it, but I know other people have, is where you can stop the podcasters and engage them in conversation. So if the podcasters were saying, oh, it's really interesting about the way museums involve the community, and I could say, oh, you know, can you tell me more about that? What examples have you seen in this research that tell me? So you can engage with it verbally as well. If you ask a topic that's off question, it will just bring you back to what you're actually talking about or what the thesis is. So it doesn't allow you to go off track, which is good for someone like me who regularly deviates down rabbit holes. It's a really engaging way of just summarizing material quickly and going back to it. Mind map didn't work for me, but there's also things just down the bottom here. You can see, you can turn it into a study guide. Now, I don't suppose that will work for me today either. No, it doesn't look as though it's going to. So you can take study cards from it and study. So if you're a student, learning something, you can create study guides, you can get a briefing, you can get a timeline. So if it's a document with a whole lot of dates in it, it'll summarize and give you a timeline of those key dates. It will also create a frequently asked questions for you from that. So it's a really, really useful tool for summarizing some of the work that we do. On the whole, free. I do pay, because I'm a student, I am using this a lot, and so I'm paying a monthly fee for that and find it extremely worthwhile for what I'm doing. But if you haven't had a chance, you can try it out for free. Go in and give it a go, upload a reading, listen to the podcast, and see what you think. And as I said, things like the American accents and things like that, they're working on. You can have a one-person interaction with the podcast. You can have two people speaking. It's just your preference. So I'm going to stop sharing now and come back to the group and bring up my slides. So just before we move on, any questions on Google LM or anything?
I, for one, will definitely be trying that out. That sounds fabulous, really fascinating. I'm going to try and find us a link somewhere for people to see a little bit more. Is there anything you can recommend?
For Google LM?
Yeah.
Just Google Notebook LM and it will come up. And lots of those things, as I said, are in beta mode, which means they're trialing things, but I am finding it works really well for my purpose. And I love it when I can upload 20 readings on a topic and it can summarize, and then it'll say this author said this, but this author thinks that. So it's a nice way of breaking it down. And when you've got a pile of documents to read, it's a lovely way of starting to get myself into them. I'm sure others have better strategies than I do, but that's how I work. Right, so I'm just going to bring my slides up again and just start. So now that we've done the live demo, I'm really curious to know how you're using AI at your work or maybe at your home. So maybe if you could just take advantage of the chat box and just put in some of the ways in which you're using AI. And it doesn't matter on what scale. It doesn't need to be to the point of studying. It could just be using it to correct spelling or organise your shopping list or plan a trip. It can be a range of different things. Curious to see. Oh, thanks, Monica, for putting that link in for Google Notebook. AI pops up in your Facebook and Messenger. Yep. AI is being integrated across most of our technology products now, and sometimes without us even knowing. What I'll do is, while you're putting your thoughts in around how you might be using AI, is I'm going to go through. This is a study that's come out of HBR, so Harvard Business Review. Monica will put the link in the chat for us. It's so good having Monica there, who's thoroughly organised and can help put those links in. So thank you. This is how AI has been found to be used. So some user cases. And I've put the 24 and 25 comparison up. Oh, great, Katie, using it to summarise content. Yeah, it's fantastic for summarising. I am someone who writes, but writes in great detail, and I often use it as a tool to help me be more concise. Anyway, sorry, I've distracted myself again. I have said I'm very good at going down rabbit holes. So you can see here that on the left-hand side is the full sort of top 10 Gen AI uses, and I've just broken down to the right-hand side or the centre and right-hand side, just the top groupings. So you can see, if you look at the 2025 list, the #1 use of AI is for therapy or companionship. So you can structure your AI. Most of them have, you can customize them. So with Google's Gemini, you can create gems, which is where you can say to it, I want you to be my PhD mentor. This is your name. You use New Zealand spelling. This is the focus, and you're studying at this university. And so it will pull all that information together, and every time you go back to it, it will respond because it knows a little bit about you, and you've given it a task and you've told it its purpose. So really interesting that therapy and companionship is at the top of that. And I guess, while I would say there's a lot of caution with receiving full therapy from AI, and it doesn't replace a psychologist, it draws on a lot of that text. So long as that wasn't anyone's only thing, it's a tool for being able to talk to, but it's just being aware of the safety and advice it gives. But at the same time, it's opening up equity to access for getting some therapy that you may not be able to have. Organising my life is the second most one, which I'm using, drawing on AI more and more for. So there's a range of ways in which that can help, such as developing a cleaning plan for your house, a decluttering plan, organising your calendar, tracking your goals, things like that. It can be about finding enhanced learning, so using AI as a study guide, which we've just looked at. Healthier living, a lot of people use it for recipes and things like that, putting in ingredients and finding out what they can do with them. Now, some of this we could have done with the web, or we could have done with some of our technology, but the speed and the way in which AI does that for us and links it into other things that we're doing. And that's, I guess, why these results are coming out like that. People are seeing the possibilities in it. Just quickly too, you can see generating code. So some people are using it to develop their coding programs for them and testing ideas out, or if they're stuck with a particular line of code, putting it into AI to see how that might help support it and help them develop code that actually works. There's other things like generating ideas. That's a really interesting study on how that might work. But there are also some considerations that we need to think about when we're using AI. So AI bias is very, very real. AI doesn't work in a vacuum. It learns from the data that it's fed. And we covered a little bit in that very first session about AI and large language models and how they get the data. But basically what it does is it scrapes the data from the internet that exists and it uses that to train the AI model. And of course, nothing on the internet is without bias. Data can be biased. It's out there, and particularly a lot of the data that's been fed into some of these machines, because they come from a very westernized perspective. And so that's what's used to train the model. Often you can see it with AI images that might be generated. They tend to be of one particular demographic group. If you put in, create a picture of a science, generally they tend to be white, male, and dressed in a suit sort of thing, sitting there. So that it's, yeah, they work on the data that it's trained for. So this is a problem because biased AI can lead to very real, very harmful consequences. You know, if AI systems are used to hire people, that system has biases, so it can lead to unfair discrimination and perpetuate existing inequalities that exist. And it applies to many other areas like loan applications, criminal justice, and so much more. What we need to be aware of is that AI outputs aren't neutral. They often have the biases represented in the data that they have been trained with. So we just need to be critical of those as a result. However, I do want to highlight that there's important work being done, particularly here in Aotearoa, around data sovereignty and protection of data. So Monica will put in the chat a website around Te Mana Runganga, which is a resource designed to support how we might use AI here and how we take care of the data that we present in that. And it's not, most of AI systems are being trained overseas, but it just gives us pause for thought about thinking about that data. And I want to acknowledge the work that that team is doing. It's also about ethical AI. So you can see that many AIs needs data for operations, and they learn from that, they operate from that, and they personalize the experiences from that. So like when I described that I've got my Gemini mentor for my study, I've told it, I've given it limitations. I've basically said, you're at this university, this is my topic, this is what I need from you. So I've given it those things. So it knows, but it personalizes experiences for people. So we need to be very careful about how AI is handling the information that we give it, where's it being stored, how long is it being kept, who owns the data. They're really important questions. So if you have a free version, often that data is being used to retrain the model. So you've got to be careful about the data that you put in. You probably wouldn't put your bank account in. I wouldn't put in some of my early writings in my study because I wouldn't want them to be available out there. So you'd be very careful with the personal data that you put in. As I said, I pay for my Gemini account, and that brings with it a security level. They don't share the data, they don't use it for training, and they delete it regularly. And a lot of those systems are like that. I've got an Apple device that uses ChatGPT. They don't keep the data or retrain it. So if you're looking at systems, and everyone will have their own preference, there's not one right one or one wrong one. I guess what I'm saying is just check to see what happens with the data that you're putting into it. One of the systems that I looked at last year was quite amazing. You could turn yourself into an avatar and walk around, and you even used your voice. So you could speak to it, and then it would read text in your voice back as it was walking around. And I thought, this is free. My voice is then uploaded to the cloud somewhere that anyone can then take and alter in any way to get it to read text. So it's just things like that to be very, very careful of. And it's thinking about the privacy policies too that might exist around ethical AI use. It's absolutely vital to understand the policies of the AI tools that we used and what they do with your data, what they do with the data that you put in, and the data, particularly if you're using it to analyze some student work or anything like that, knowing where it goes. It's just about being aware and being informed. So we'll go to that next slide now.
Sorry, Tara, I quickly wanted to say I've just posted a couple of additional links in the chat because Tara was mentioning Gemini and Apple Intelligence, something that she's been using. So in case you are interested what that is that Tara's using, there are some links. And Tara, there was a question from Katie. I just want to let you and Katie know I've taken note of that question, and I'll add that to our questions a little bit further down if that's all right.
Right. Thanks, Monica, and thanks for putting those links in. Yeah, that's fantastic. So AI black box. So what does this mean? Well, with many advanced AI models, especially the complex one, it's like it connects with deep neural networks, and it's not always straightforward to understand how the AI has arrived at a conclusion. If you use most systems, they might put a list of references at the end, but often doesn't talk you through how it gets there. And so it's this real lack of transparency that can be an issue. And I guess where examples like this come into play is that if you were using an AI for something critical like a medical diagnosis, you wouldn't just want the answer. You wouldn't want to put it in and it come back and say, this is a problem. You actually want to understand what it considered and how it came up with that. What was the reasoning behind that answer? You know, if you were doing it in a medical thing, why did the AI determine the patient had that sort of condition? What data points led to its consideration? So it's that explainability in AI that's key. There's research being done around the world about making AI models more transparent and understandable and opening up that black box so we can understand it. And AI is changing so frequently, it's very hard to keep up with all the developments. One day I think I've got a handle on how something works and then it moves on to something else. So it's just being aware of that, that nature and that reasoning. And as I said, base models give you links to references so you can go and see where it sourced the information. But actually, if you want to come out with an outcome, you need to know how it reasoned with that. Another one is AI accuracy, so about verifying information. You know, you can probably tell from this, AI outputs aren't always entirely correct. They have time where they fabricate information. It's called hallucinations in some fields, but they fabricate based on the information that it's fed in. So we can't assume everything that an AI tells us is accurate, especially with large language models. We need to be thinking about that and the truth that they're generated on. They're designed to give you a response, and sometimes that response is more about being coherent and sounding convincing than factually accurate. And sometimes when it's generating images, the image generation and a lot of the software still isn't there. So if it produces text or some images, you often get spelling mistakes that come through. So what it does mean is it's absolutely crucial that you fact check and critically evaluate any AI generated content. It's that level of skepticism, I guess, in some ways. So I'm going to let you in on a little secret here. The slides that you are looking at today are completely AI generated. I gave it some text and put it in and said, this is what I'm doing, come up with some slides. And it, to be fair, it did a good job. It generated the images too for me, but I had to have several goes at them because some of them weren't, I wasn't overly happy with what they'd represented in those pictures. So it can do things like slides in that. However, on this slide, and why I wanted to mention this is I needed to have the information to go back and check that what it said was right, because some of the things that they talked about weren't accurate at all. So you've got to have that knowledge content. So it might generate the slides, but they wouldn't be of use to me if I didn't have some of that knowledge to be able to go in and check that what it was saying was correct. So it can be a time saver and that can produce some of that content, but actually the person using it and responsible for it needs to go through and check it carefully, and they need to have the level of knowledge to understand whether what it's saying is correct or not. But at most AI, Gen AI models have slide production. This I generated in Google using a combination of Google Gemini for the outline, and then use Google Slides, which has generated slide content for me now, and it came up with the images. And as I said, I needed to run my eyes over it to make sure it was fine. But you can see how some of these things might automate processes and free up some of our time, which is great, but you still have to have that human level overseeing it and checking it. So AI law and IP. So this is really crucial too, because there's not a general consensus on intellectual property in AI. And it'll be a changing landscape, and there's lots, again, like anything to do with AI, lots of work being done in this space. But one of the biggest questions right now is who actually owns the copyright of AI-generated outputs? Is it the person who prompted the AI? So if I put the prompts in for these slides, do I legally own them? Is it the company that created the AI model, or is it something else entirely? So they're big conversations to be having. And there's a lot of complex legal issues involved with it as well. It has significant implications when it comes to using AI-generated content commercially, particularly if you're using it for commercial. It could be inadvertently infringing somebody's copyright or intellectual property if you don't own the content. So just something to be thinking about in that space. Whenever I use AI-generated content, as I identified with the slide before, I own it and say, actually, I've used AI to help me do this. That doesn't mean that AI is the knowledge holder necessarily. I've still got to check it, but I acknowledge where AI has played a role in helping support that information. It's also the human element and responsibility. And this is my last slide. I think it is anyway, or almost the last slide before I open it up to the floor and we have a discussion about it, which I think is the important aspect of this call today. But the human element reveal is basically about that humans are responsible for how AI tools are trained. We train, or we've set up the circumstances as to how AI has been trained through giving it access to a whole range of content. AI is just a tool, and it's a piece of technology. It doesn't have its own moral compass. It's up to us, the users, to guide it and use it ethically and responsibilities. So the decisions that we make about how we deploy and use AI and the outputs we share are our responsibility, and we've got to have that human oversight. And it was just like I was saying with these slides, it produced some slides that were great and some that I needed to really work on and then think about how I was going to talk to them. So it's thinking about that, but also thinking in the way that we use AI. AI absorbs a lot of energy to be able to run. In fact, actually, Monica, I think the RNZ link I put in was actually about, not about the university, but actually about the conservation of water, that how AI can use a lot of energy. And so it's actually thinking about, do we want to use AI to do this, knowing that we're generating a lot of energy to create content? Yes, that's the one. It's creating a lot of electricity demand around local service areas because it takes a lot of energy to generate output. So it's being really cautious about how we use it and thinking whether should it generate a shopping list for me, or is that something I can do? You know, it's things like that, making a conscious decision about how we use it, but at the same time knowing that we've got to create human oversight of AI as well. It's our critical thinking that is absolutely crucial to how we use it. That article that Monica shared on RNZ is just a couple of days old, and it's come out of a hui that was held up, I think I want to say in Waikato, around AI, and it's talking about usage of power in relation to AI. And then just finally, today we've had a very quick overview of some of the considerations, I want to say challenges as well, considerations of using AI, but it's also being aware of those. Like, this is an image I took, and it's funny, it's from Pātaka Museum for probably a couple of decades ago now, but I really love the saying that knowledge helps you see further. Like, going in and using tools blindly isn't always great, but actually if we have some knowledge and test out, it enables us to see potential where it can really help in times where it's not necessarily crucial to be able to use. So on that note, I'm going to stop sharing and come back to the main group and see what questions are burning. I know, Monica, you said there's a couple there already, but also just have a discussion about how you might be using it or what thoughts are going through your mind.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm fascinated every time I find out more about AI. But Katie, I know your camera doesn't work. I don't know if you're able to unmute yourself. Feel free to do so, or otherwise I can read your question on your behalf, whatever works for you.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi everyone. Sorry, I don't know, my camera's clashing with something. One of the key reasons why I'm holding back from trying it out too much during work time is because of the policy that we have, and we're a council run facility. Do any of you have quite strong policies in your places, and are you working around those at the moment or avoiding it like me?
Before I respond, Danny or Donna, I don't know, or even Monica, whether you've got a response you want to make, don't feel free, either you have to, but if you want to respond to Katie's question, feel free.
Kia ora, we haven't currently, but just as I was reading, not to take these out so I don't hear myself twice, it really made me think, all of us, on the time that I've been here today. So just really made me think about what we, should be looking at. Should we be looking at that?
In terms of just the general use of it, I can see the value added. Like, I'm getting increasingly busier and busier, and the more I can throw some information together and have it kind of sort itself out for me and summarize it would just make my life fabulous, so much better. But yeah, as I say, I just don't want to find myself compromising the workplace policies. So
yeah, and that's the right stance to take, Katie. You don't want to go against what your organisation has agreed as their policy. Te Papa has a policy in place that we will be able to share at some stage. It'll be available on our website, or I'll put it up in our Facebook group once it becomes official. Our policy is encouraging use, but to work with caution. So different places will have different approaches to using it, and I think you need to go with your guidelines, but knowing for workplaces who are saying let's not use it, it's actually only going to, like, it's changing so much and integrated to everything that if they say don't use it, there will be systems that your workplace already uses that will have AI integrated to it, whether even if it's not using things like ChatGPT, there will be other models integrated. For those that are Microsoft compatible, if you've got the Microsoft license, there's a baseline of Copilot generally integrated into each model of Microsoft, that if it's the, depending on which license you've got, that Copilot model doesn't share your data, so you can use that, and it will not go any further and it deletes the data. But It's just up to each workplace to what they decide to do.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, Denny has put some comments in the chat because her mic doesn't want to work. But in regards to that, those of you that can't see it, she mentioned they don't have any policies yet, or they haven't been shared yet. And there is this value that could be added for busy people to use AI if that was taking some of the tasks, out that make our days so busy. I've just changed workplaces, as some of you will know, from the Waitangi Treaty Grounds to Manaia Kalani Education Network. And at Waitangi, we didn't have a policy when I left a couple of weeks ago, so I don't think that has changed since. And at the same time, though, we had a lot of tools in use around the organization that did have AI included. For example, I don't know who else uses the Employment Hero platform as a tool from their HR people and culture department for policies and appraisals and leave and whatever else. So in the appraisals, you could use a little magic pen to write things for you. So those tools are there, and I was always a little bit concerned whether we knew enough about what we were doing. In my new workplace, on the other hand, I mean, this is only week one, but Gemini is in everybody's mind, and every weekly staff meeting, there's a Gemini snippet on the agenda. So tomorrow I'm going to go to that first staff meeting and watch what people are sharing. So obviously that's the opposite end, that's where Gemini is very much embraced, or AI is very much embraced.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think AI is here. We can't back away from it. It's going to be ever present in our lives online and probably in our lives elsewhere. So it's knowing the things we need to be cautious of, which is why we talked about some of those today, but also actually thinking about the ways in which we can use it very, very safely. But as I said, it's here, so we need to think about how we integrate it, how we use it, and what good examples look like, particularly in the workplace. So if you're going to introduce it to your workplace, what does it look like? Because for organisations that have policies, even if they've got a policy in place now, it will need to change because the technology changes. And it's also very hard for organisations, particularly smaller organisations, to understand about AI, particularly if you're not technical in any way. What is AI? What does it mean for our workplace? So it's easy to just put it over here and think we'll come into that later, rather than have, and I know a lot of teams around the country are also investing a lot of time in thinking, what does this mean for us before putting out policy guidelines too? Because you don't want to strap yourself into one position and then find out that it's changing over that time.
That's
now,
right.
if you don't mind, I quickly want to read Denny's question, which is something that I have been thinking about as well, and I would love to know what you think. So Denny is talking about saying to people not to use it might hinder education around AI for staff and opportunities for ourselves to learn how to use it critically, ethically. It's just like preventing students from learning using devices takes away opportunities to learn how to use a device purposefully and with a critical mind. And I completely agree with you, Danny. And I was thinking of this article that probably quite a few of us have seen online, the Victoria Law students that are now not allowed to use their device in the exams for fear of using AI and cheating in the exam with that. I've just, put the link in the chat here. Tara, do you have any thoughts around that? Did you have a chance to read that article by any chance?
Yeah, I think that's a really good example where for those law students involved, there hasn't been thought into how you would complete exams without a computer. So, I mean, most students don't write by hand anymore, particularly at that level. Some still do, but a lot rely on their computers, particularly for exams. So if AI is going to be a barrier, in my opinion, that school needs to look at how they can ensure that students can use aspects of AI to still complete their assessment. It doesn't mean they don't have the knowledge. They still need to verify it. Now, I'm not saying AI should be writing the exams for them, but I don't know that saying actually you can't use computers, you've got to go back to pen and paper for this exam is the right answer. And I imagine for that school, they'll be looking very quickly at how can we still bring computers back for our exams, but make sure they're safe for students to use. And it may be that they need to change the way their assignments are crafted or the exams are crafted. And it's the same for students in the schools. AI is out there. Now, you can get it to answer your questions and cut and paste that and put it into assignments. I think sometimes it's obvious when AI have written it, other times it's not. But what you actually want to encourage students about is that critical thinking. So you can do that, but is it right? And actually, if you want to learn something, you're stuck on a math solution, you put that question in and say, here's the solution I'm trying to solve. I'm stuck at this point. What should I do next? And that AI will tutor you through or scaffold you through rather than giving you the answer. And that's where things like that are really helpful, because if you don't have your teacher available to hand, you're doing your homework, maybe you've got no one around that can help with a particular question you're answering on, you can put it on and say, this is what I'm trying to do. I don't want the answer. Can you tell me what my next step should be?
It sort of reminds me of a time when I was in early secondary school, and we had this kind of thing when we misspelled words, we had to write them 3 times or 3 lines of them or something. That was a lovely, lovely teacher we had in German high school. So it was in whatever German mistake I made at the time. And I know I very proudly wrote the word out more times than I was required, being a bit of a goody two-shoes. But I misspelled it. And the teacher wrote underneath, along the lines of, unfortunately, you misspelled this, So all my practice was wrong. And I know that it is important for our children to handwrite and so on. But how much have I learned about spelling in a foreign language and about grammar from the little wiggly lines and Word documents and Google documents? So technology is not all bad. Technology can be really helpful if it is used well. But, it sounds a bit scary. Those of us that grew up in the 70s and 80s, Terminator, Skynet, all this kind of stuff, those of us a little bit older than Danny are showing our age by laughing. Sorry. It sounds really scary sometimes, is the world going to be taken over? So Tara, what do you reckon? I mean, I can hear you are encouraging cautious exploration. Why do you think we should be engaging with AI in this manner, being in the culture and heritage sector?
It's here, and it's only going to change at rapid pace. So I think that parking it for now or ignoring it, it doesn't go away. And so I think that's why we proceed with caution. There's a really great example, and when Monica's next talking, I'll try and find it, of Katie Cooper and Gareth Watkins from Te Papa, who were doing a test to see how AI might help with the collections. So they took a set of collection items that hadn't been properly detailed or labelled, and apologies, I'm not using the right museum terminology for this, but I'll make sure I put the blog post in. And what it does is it's a silversmith objects, and they practice testing on how it could write the descriptions for it. Now, it took quite a few attempts to use. They were very careful with the AI system that they chose, making sure it was more energy efficient than others. And it took some goes, but they got it to the point where it effectively able to write some labelling for those items. Now, it's a huge collection. It's, bless you, Monica, for putting that up. I'll have a look and see if it is the right one. We're doing some test work and things, but that's an example of how it can help cultural and heritage, particularly with our collection items that may not be up online, may not be described correctly and things like that. But AI, yes, we've got these images from the movies of robots taking over the world and all sorts of things from those movies. I don't know what the future holds. I think that if we think carefully as a human society, that should never happen, because we should have safeguards put in place for that. But I also think AI is here, and so the more we know about it, the more we can learn how we can use it to help our workplaces be more productive. It's not necessarily about replacing people with AI and thinking, well, we won't have this job field now or these roles in a particular place. We'll just use AI to do that. It's not that, but how can AI make your work more rewarding by taking some of those routine tasks off you, just like it can do at home? So And the same as I did with my slides, it saved me. I spent a lot of time on slide development when I do presentations. They were done in well under the time that I would have created to put them together, but I still had to put the time into checking them, but it still was less time saving. So it's thinking about those smart uses of it and how we can do it, but always having that eye on, okay, so now it's changed again. What does this mean? I don't know that that fully answers your question, Monica, but I think the future of AI is still unknown, but we know that it changes so rapidly that we actually need to be aware of it. And I feel for those people who don't have access to know more about AI. So I think there's a whole lot of work we need to do in our communities for ensuring that our populations at least have a base understanding of what AI is.
I think what I hear from you is, on the one hand, the tool is here regardless. But what I'm also taking away from this is that unless we engage with it, other people will develop it regardless. And the more different lenses and perspectives we can include in it, the better the outcome might be in the end to solve some of those more menial tasks is probably the word, and then we can actually concentrate on the higher functions, on making sure that that information is correct, that it meets those needs, that it's ethical, that it represents different cultures. Because if we all went like, let's not touch this, who is going to make the decisions, and who is going to drive that forward? I hope that's, not putting any words into your mouth, but that's what I took away from listening to you.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I think back to the equity issue that we have in New Zealand, particularly, like if I link it to an education society, we have students who have access to a lot of things, and we have a huge equity issue where there's a lot of our students that don't have access to good learning, don't have access to good technology. And when I used to be a technology facilitator, back when Monica and I used to do that at the same time, but in different companies, we talked a lot about the digital divide, which in the first instance referred to students or people who had access to technology and how they could use that to enhance their learning and personalise their learning, and things like that, and those that didn't, and the impact that it had for them because they're growing up without knowing that skill set. So if they want to get a job and they haven't had access to technology, all of that makes it much harder because they've got to learn, and they've got to learn later on. And often if they've got to use it for a job, it's at high pace rather than growing up with it. Now, I'm not saying everyone needs technology. I'm just saying about the digital divide, but it's now become a time between, even in the same school, those who have access to technology, so teachers that might be teaching with it, might encourage your students to be using AI in the classroom, perhaps as a personal tutor. So if you're all doing maths and you're stuck with a problem, like I mentioned before, let's use AI to help you solve it. And Khan Academy, which is an online learning platform, has a great AI tutor, and it is programmed not to give the answer, but instead take students through it. It's called Carmingo. It's free. Oh, actually, sorry, I don't think it is. It's free for schools and students. I think it costs $5 for anyone else to use per month. The website will have the information, but it guides you through the next step and scaffolds you, so it can pick up where you're at and scaffold you to the next learning. Now, that is a great example of AI working really well. But imagine if you were a student who was struggling with learning, didn't know the next step, you're in a busy classroom, and you've got no one at home that can help you with that level of homework. Then you can start to see that digital divide getting a bit wider and a bit wider. And so your access to learning and your access to some of those tools is really limited. So, we do all need to be thinking about how we use it and the impact it has for us as a society, if not everyone else is aware of how it might be used. Any other questions, Partai? Sorry, Monica.
You just beat me to it. That's exactly.
Any wonderings about AI or different tools? Again, I stress I'm not an expert. I've just got an interest in this.
It's great to gather more knowledge about it, because it's not something that I'm going to say generation But yeah, it's just not something I have been thinking about. However, of late, I recently, just a personal experience, I put in an abstract and it came back, for me to check. And I'm like, who wrote this? And it was AI'd. So it was, I just sort of, like, in my head, I'm going, who wrote this? I didn't write this. They mixed me up. So that was really sort of made me think more about AI, and thank you all for, having these things is amazing.
Yeah. Thanks, Donna. It's really interesting. We did job interviews a little while ago here, and you can tell people AI is getting better. So there probably was some that had used AI, but you could tell people who'd used it to write their cover letter with the way the language was presented. That's not a foolproof. It's like people say, oh, you can check assignments for cheating and things like that through AI systems. There's systems that you can use. It's not quite as easy as that nowadays, and it'll get better and better. But you can tell sometimes when you get responses or you get information, you think, oh, I wonder if this is AI.
That was exactly the point I wanted to make. Yeah, exactly the point I wanted to make. I was advertising for staff on my team, and I had a huge number of applicants. And those applicants whose cover letters were very obviously created by AI without them going back over it, or that the AI checker came up and said to me it's 97% computer generated or something like that. Those ones actually went on the pile. I'm not going to talk to you, at least not initially. So I actually discarded some of those applications because the role I was advertising for was one where the person needed to be able to be eloquent of their own accord. But now I'm thinking, maybe that is not what that person needs to be like in the future, because AI might be learning those kind of skills. And then that person could have AI assistance and focus some of their time on other things, So, I was so convinced that I did the right thing by discarding, some of those applications. And now I'm really questioning myself.
Yeah.
I mean, not that the applicant was not a fabulous person who got appointed,
Yeah.
and that's absolutely fine. But, it makes me question my decision at that time. And it wasn't that long ago.
No, you make a really good point, Monica. I'm just going to pick up on something you said. You could tell that they were AI written, but they hadn't gone back and checked it. So that's the thing. If you want to use AI to write stuff, use it. Like, if that works for you, that's fine. It's the checking part of it that you need to do, because I don't think I've generated anything from AI that I haven't needed to work. And I don't, I'm thinking I don't generally use it to write reports, because actually I need to think that through when I'm doing it. But if I'm generating content of some sort, I have to go back through and correct and change and put it into my language. So it's a good point you made that I overlooked when I said that. It's fine to use it for that if that's what you want to do, but just check.
Well, this has been a super interesting presentation and conversation. Thank you so much for being on board. I know that lots of people will come back and watch the recording, because that does always happen without fail after the session. And I'm just sorry that we are not able to have that conversation with these people right away, right now. But please, if you're watching this recording later, come back to our Facebook group and start a conversation in there. And maybe, Tara, I don't know if you've got a chance to quickly find that link for us, but most of us have probably come to this call here via the Facebook page and a Facebook group, apologies. And I would love to have some more of those conversations from there. However, it is 4:25, which means we are pretty much at the end of our session on a Thursday afternoon. Fairly cloudy and rainy out there in the Waiho Valley right now. So I might just take over, if that's all right, Tara, and share our next presentation, which is going to be on 29th of May, 3 weeks from today. And it will be on the HMS Buffalo project by Mercury Bay Museum. The lovely Rebecca Cox, who is the manager at the Mercury Bay Museum, will speak to us about their fascinating project. Feel free to check out their website beforehand and have a look at what they've got online. On this slide here, you can see the QR code and the Meet link, but we will, as usual, put it up on the Facebook page, and the lovely Jacinda from the committee will also endeavor to send out a newsletter so she can share that link with you then. As always, we will be recording this session as well and share it through the website. But as you could see by today's conversations, it is really worthwhile coming to the live session if you can, because the conversation with all of you really makes us, makes the webinar so much richer and adds so much information. So thank you so much. Any final thoughts or questions from anybody? Oh, there's some. Yeah, Katie, it was great to have you. Yeah, thank you so much, everybody. And thanks, Tara, for putting the Facebook link in. And yes, can't wait to see our international guest star, Bex, next week. Well, I'll finish us off with karakia then. And I hope you all have a lovely rest of the week. Kia hora te marino, kia whakapapapuna mo te moana. Hei huarahi mā tātou I te rangi nei. Aroha atu, aroha mai. Tātou ia tātou katoa. Oye, tai ke e. Kia ora anō. Go well. Have a wonderful rest of the week, and we'll see you in 3 weeks' time, or possibly before then on the Facebook group. Hei konara.